We're going to take a minute and pray together, and that can seem freaky. You probably watched too many exorcism movies. It's not that bizarre, and you may have never prayed before, but I'm going to pray out loud over the microphone, and so you'll kind of get to participate in that. And, when we pray, sometimes people close their eyes. I get it. You don't know me. You don't trust me. Keep your eyes open. Stare at me the whole time. That's fine. We're going to talk to God. I mean, Ken Shamrock is going to be sharing his story in a little bit, and he's going to be talking about how God changed his life. And I know for me, I grew up in this area. I've lived in Stratford County just about my entire life, and he changed my life too. And that's why we as a church, we sing, and because we're really celebrating. And anyway, you didn't come here to hear me talk, so let me pray. Jesus, I just pray that in everything that happens this morning, for those of us who believe in you, man, do you just speak to us and be with us? And for the people in the room who don't believe in you, we just pray that at some point this morning, they'd consider you. What if you are real? What if you could do for them what you did for Ken Shamrock? And that just in every single person here today, though we may not know you and we may not believe in you, God, you know who every single one of us are. And you know all of the events in our life that you've kind of brought us through to get us to the place where we'd be sitting in a church service today. For the first time in our life, maybe for a long time, maybe some people here swore that they would never darken the doors ever again, but somehow here they are. We just pray, God, that in these moments, you do the things that you want to do in their lives and our lives. And we just pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, why don't you go ahead and sit down and begin to limber up. We don't want anybody getting injured here. We're about to give a huge round of applause for our guest this morning. He flew in yesterday from Nevada, and so everybody's, your vocal cords already warmed up, so let's give a huge Restoration Church welcome to our guest this morning, Ken Shamrock.
Oh, that hurt. Just talking about earlier, it's like when I hear the music, I hurt. Then I just try to move around, and it's real. It hurts. Wow, man, it's great to be here. I just want to say thank you for coming. Anytime we get to, or I get to, share my experience with other Christian brothers and sisters, and just other brothers and sisters, period. It's a good thing for me. I enjoy it. I just want to see if I can't relay how God makes me feel. I think most people already know I'm pretty confident when it comes to fighting, but I want you to think about this for a minute, okay? Imagine that your confidence goes beyond what our reality is here on earth. For instance, if you were afraid of not dying, we hear songs of live like you were dying, right? Like just go put it all out there, have fun, do all these things. Well, seriously, just think about that for a moment. But no fear. You're afraid of dying. You're going to live forever. Imagine that if you had that confidence within yourself, the strength and the things that you could do here on earth. Well, it's true. It's whether or not you want to believe it or not, that's just on you. But to have the ability for you to live for eternity is real. You have to make a decision on whether or not you want to accept Jesus Christ in your life or not to have that come true, have that be a reality. Of course, you're going to lose all the physical things in life, but when it comes to your spirit, your soul, which is really who we are, is eternity. Now, flip it around for a minute. Think about risking eternal damnation or eternal life. I mean, if you were to put up there and give somebody a choice, what do you want, eternal damnation or eternal life? You'd have to be insane to wish for eternal damnation, right? We'd all want that goodness, but it's there. The hard part is figuring out whether people want to believe that it's there or it isn't there. But to me, boy, that's a big risk. Especially if you haven't searched to find out whether or not it's real or not real. Because it's been my experience, people who have reached out to figure out whether or not this God or this Christian thing that people talk about, is it real or isn't it real? Most people don't even want to even experience it or even to check it to see if it was real. But in most cases, anybody that is a smart individual, whether you're a stock trader or a businessman, you always make sure that you are always investing in something that has got good foundation to it. It's funny how it goes away when it comes to Christianity. Like the smartest people in the world wouldn't even go and find out whether or not it's real or not real. It's just, it's a hoax. It doesn't, well, wouldn't go and even find out. And if they do, 100% of the time, they're either going to accept or reject, but they're going to know there's something. They're either going to reject it because it gets too personal for them, or it makes them feel uncomfortable because they got to expose themselves, and they'll walk away from it, but they know it's real. Or they're going to embrace it and accept it and have eternal life. There's your risk. There it is right there in a nutshell. It's real. Now that I've given you my beginning speech about your choice of whether or not you believe or do not believe, I'm going to explain a little bit about where I came from and some of the choices that I made. And hopefully, as we go through this, that some of you can relate or have had some of the same experiences, that it will somewhere in your lives be able to move you farther along in your faith. Those of you that do not really know me, I want to introduce you to me. I was born in Warner Robins Air Force Base in Macon, in Georgia. I was born under the name Kenneth Wayne Kilpatrick. I kept it Irish. Shamrock, Kilpatrick, Shamrock. Is that Scottish or Irish? Whatever. But that's what I was born under. I was born pretty much, my biological mother was a go-go dancer. In today's standards, she danced in a nightclub, made money for dancing. She tried to make ends meet, obviously. Where my biological father was, I don't know. At that time, didn't know. Don't remember him that much during those times. But she spent a lot of time away from the house. Now, I grew up in this area that was the ghetto, okay? And this was in Georgia. And back in, say, 69 and 70, I was 5 and 6 years old. I had two brothers, both of them were older, but only by a year. We were all a year apart. So if I was 5, it was 6 and 7. A lot of times, we pretty much did kind of raise ourselves. I know it's hard to believe. 5 years old, you look around at your kids at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you just There's no way that's possible. Yes, it is. You find ways to survive. Now, in the neighborhood, there was always broken toys, food being thrown away, that me and my brothers would find ways to either get the food or we'd get the toys and we'd play with them when they were broken, or we would just take things that was food that was thrown out and we would get those and we'd eat it. I know it's gross, but that time it was actually pretty good because our bellies were full. But we did. We found ways to survive even at a young age. And because of the environment that we were in, it was, and again, to my recollection, my knowledge at this age, and there's a lot of spots that are not connected, but during this time, from what I can remember and what I seen, was that it was all African-American neighborhood. I think there was one other white family that was right next to us. That was it. When I would go to school, it was predominantly African-American. Now, we're talking about 69, 70, 71, okay, where people were being killed over the color of their skin. I mean, it was still pretty strong racial tensions going on all over the world. And so you've seen a lot of violence happen from this. With me particularly, we didn't have a TV at this time. We didn't even have any mirrors, so I didn't really understand everything that was going on. I just kind of just dealt with the environment the way it was, and I did what I needed to do. And I remember we would go to school. I was in kindergarten, and of course my brothers were in a different playground area. I remember every single day I was in a fight, and it wasn't one, it was multiple people that I was fighting. I didn't know why, just was. And I was constantly fighting. I remember one time where we were, it was in the park, I was getting jumped, I was getting kicked, it was in the middle of this circle, a bunch of girls and boys were kicking me, beating on me, and next thing I know, my brother, I didn't know it was my brother at the time, this white flash come grabbing through the middle of this circle, and he yanks me, and we start running. And I remember running, looking back, and this mob was chasing us. And I looked back, and there was this one girl, which is how crazy it is, right? And I mean, she's probably, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, I don't know. But they looked like giants to me. I mean, it was like this mob chasing us, and we were running. I remember looking back, and this girl had blood pouring down her face. And she was just like screaming and angry. And it was like I was running, and they were trying to catch us. I thought we were dead. Like, if they caught us, we're dead. And I'm running, and there's blood running down this girl's face, and I was like, this is just nuts. So we get to the house, and we're right around the corner from the park. We run inside, lock all the doors. We had these windows that slid down, up and down. I jumped on top of them, trying to hold it down. Glass gets broken. I jump down. My feet are all cut up, kicking open the door, throwing dirt clods in. Just think for a minute. 6, 7, 8 years old. These kids are probably maybe 2 or 3 years older than us. What is going on? I think about it now, and I'm like, it just doesn't seem real. But it was. And I remember we were fending for our lives in our own home. I mean, basically it wasn't much of a home, but it was still a home. Clods getting thrown through there. I remember I was young and I was afraid. I remember sliding under the bed, hiding, looking. I could see out the hallway into the front room and seeing the cops show up. And then my biological mother shows up, and this gang starts pouring around the house. And like I said, predominantly all African-American. And I remember it was this woman who's, the girl was standing right next to her, the blood running down her face, and they're all screaming and yelling. And I remember my biological mother standing there, and this mob just kept building. And they were all trying to get to her. And there was these two police officers standing there. And all of a sudden, the lady from the girl reached over and bam, hit her. And then just everything broke out. And then I don't remember anything from that time on. I mean, I literally just shut down. But this is what I grew up in. It was normal to me. I didn't know anything else. It's just what it was. She meets a guy in the military. He flew helicopters, got shot down, was decorated, She met him at work or whatever. We jump in a 69 Camaro, pretty cool car back then, with the trailer hooked to the back of it. And we're going to California. Now, I don't even know what that is, right? I know we're leaving where we're at, and it's like, cool. You know, we're going to have a daddy, you know, white picket fence, a dog, all the good stuff, you know, we're going. Travel all the way down, and we get there. I told you about how it was when I was in Georgia. It's just like, it felt comfortable to me. It's just what it was. It was home to me. Even though I fought all the time and all those things were happening, I felt at home. That's where I lived. Everything looked normal to me. I get to Napa, California. It don't look normal to me. It's not what I'm used to seeing. People don't talk like I do. They don't dress like I do. They don't walk like I do. They sure as heck don't act like I do. So immediately, it's like, this doesn't feel right. End up getting enrolled in school. Now, kids, man, they're brutal, right? When they're that young, they basically just say what's on their mind. They do things, they just are. And usually they represent what they see at home, what they feel at home, and what they act at home. Usually that's what you're going to get. Not all the time, but usually. Just like in Georgia, where kids were violent towards me because of what was happening in their homes and what they saw on TV. I didn't know it. Now I was in a different environment, but I was different. It didn't feel like anything normal to me. First day of school, one of the supposedly tougher kids in school, 3 or 4 kids gathering around him. I see it. You know, when you come from the streets and you're usually in the environment, you usually notice things that are unsettled around the area. You start seeing crowds gather. You start seeing people talk and gather, and you just know. And I know what's coming. And so I back up against the wall. They start coming towards me. I'm like, okay, here we go. Watch him come over, and in my mind, I'm going, okay, I'm going to take him out first, then him, and then him. I, at this age, have already got a sense of strategy to be able to take individuals out because of the situation that I was in. This is how I grew up. So as they're walking up, I already got to set up what's going to happen. So as they move towards me, mouthing starts, start talking smack, insulting my clothes, the way I talk, the way I walk, all the things that are easily visible to pick on. The problem with this situation is they don't know who I am. They don't know where I come from. They don't know how I grew up. So immediately the jabbering starts. They start talking smack. One thing leads to another. I'm not used to this, right? So he goes, okay, today, 3 o'clock, after school, meet me behind the gym, and we're going to fight. As soon as he said the word fight, bam, I hit him. As soon as I hit him, I keep putting the boots to him. Bang, bang. And as I'm doing this, I'm watching the rest of them. And they take off. So I back up. And this isn't normal for this environment, for somebody to do this. But from where I came from, it's not the same thing. People are stabbing and shot, and there's some serious stuff going on, so you don't give them a chance. So in my mind, I'm thinking, like, I didn't have an understanding about what they meant. I mean, where I come from, you don't make reservations for a fight. It's like, yeah, let me tell you where I'm going to be, what time, so you can bring your friends. It just didn't make sense to me. So here I am in the middle of this situation. Everything's different to me. I'm a different person. It's not the same environment I'm used to. I'm a little bit more radical than what they're used to seeing as a kid. So I get suspended first day of school. No big deal. Had to do some work. But here's the thing. There was already a train wreck waiting to happen. Because if you look at who I was and my brothers were, a year apart from one another, 5, 6, and 7, never been raised. Really, we just raised ourselves. We found our own way. She meets this guy in the military. He's all strict by the guideline and the rules. Everything is regimented. It doesn't work very well. Now, in his mind, they're just kids. Break them and whip them right into shape. Well, anybody that's raised kids before knows it ain't that easy. It's difficult to raise kids, and especially after they've already had a few years of running wild. So here he was thrown right in the middle of this situation with 3 boys that were not easily raised, to where he's going to regiment us and raise us and teach us to tell the truth and work hard and do all these things that he himself had to do as a child. Well, it didn't work out so well. I'll tell you a little story and something that really started to send me in a different direction. Because it did honestly started out pretty innocently. We're having dinner one night, just like people used to do. They sit around the table, they'd serve food, family would eat together. But in those days, a lot of us understand, it was my age, you eat everything on your plate. That was just the way it was. You eat everything on your plate. You serve it, you eat it. So as we're sitting down there, we get served up. I don't like peas. So we get the plate of peas. We're sitting there. We have to eat this stuff. I just can't choke it down. I just cannot choke it down. Ugh. So I start to hide them, sticking them between my legs, and smashing them, and just like, it was that bad, like I just couldn't eat them. Well, I get caught. Yeah. So he gets me up, and I stand up, and they're stuck to my pants, and they're everywhere. It's like, sorry, I busted. Now, he goes, all right, no dessert for you and no TV. Now, remember, I told you back early, man, we didn't have a TV. And most of the time, we didn't have a whole lot of food. So no dessert, no TV. That was pretty, I was like, oh, that hurt. It was like no dessert. And then I could hear him in the front room laughing because the TV was on and they were talking and, all that stuff was happening. And it was like I wasn't a part of it. Even though it probably wasn't all that great because of the tension, all things in the house, but I could still hear them in there. And I wasn't there. And I felt bad, like, man. He already had me right there, taking that away. So I got to get more creative now. I was like, I'm not missing dessert. So they go to bed, everybody's asleep. I get up and I raid the cookie cabinet. Literally go in and eat it. I don't even try to hide it, just ate them. I was like, yeah. Next morning comes around. Who ate the cookies? It's like, whoa. Wow. Like, they're just cookies. It's like, really? So they're screaming and yelling starts, get up. Brothers come in. He's like, who ate the cookies? I was like, come on, really? Who ate the cookies? Ugh. Who didn't get cookies? Me. It's like, really? Okay, I'll play the game. I ain't telling them. So my brothers, they ain't going to say anything, at least not yet. They're sitting there looking at me, like glaring at me, and I'm like, nope. So he goes, okay, all right. Now, it started out, in the right direction, like he's going to, he's got to discipline us. Nothing wrong with that. He's got to show, he's got control and that, we can tell the truth and do all the right things. He sends us in the room, takes his belt off, lines us up. Yeah, imagine that. Line up, I'm going to beat you. Yes, sir. We all line up. Bam, 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 right down the line. Boom, boom, boom. And I ain't saying anything. And now my brothers are glaring at me like, it's like, I ain't saying it. And he comes up and he says, one of you looks at me, going to tell the truth. Okay, now it starts to be not about the cookies anymore. Now it's about me and him. I'm losing the whole concept of this discipline thing to where it's now about him showing everybody that he's the man, that I'm in control, and that I'm going to teach you how to be young men. To me saying no. It became a struggle now. It wasn't about right and wrong anymore. So he lines us up and he beats us some more. And I ain't saying anything. Now, my brothers are looking at him. Tell him, Kenny, tell him, tell him, tell him. And it's like, yeah, I think he already knew it was me. But now we're at a point where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter now. Now it's like he's not going to break me. So he sends them out. Tells pull down my pants and then literally starts beating me around the room, chasing me around the room. He's got the belt buckle at the end of it because he can't hit me because I'm moving, trying to run away from him. So he's swinging at me. Hit me in the head and the body. And it just went from the right direction into a completely wrong direction. Yep, exactly my thoughts. So, I'm done. Now as a child, right? I mean, think about this. As a kid, right? You don't know. You're already gone through all these issues and problems and, you're trying to figure out the right way and the wrong way, and you haven't been raised. All these things go on to where now you've been put into the situation where you're like, what was that? Like, as a kid, you shut down. You're like, I'm done. It's like you don't know what is right. You don't know how in the world did that ever happen. So as a kid, I'm like, I'm done. I don't need none of that. So I end up running away, living in a car, an abandoned car, stealing, got stabbed, strong arm robbery, you name it, I did it. Now, by this time, my brothers had already, with this beating and all the stuff that went on, there was a few things after that, and as time passed on, and they ended up getting put into placement, and everything went downhill from there. I mean, it just literally, the fighting in the house, the beatings went on with the spouse. I mean, it was a madhouse. It just was a madhouse. And it was chaotic. And so the brothers ended up in placement. They got locked away. I ended up running away. I got stabbed, got strong arm robbery, all kinds of stuff. I ended up in placement. Now, it was it was, in my experience, and I've experienced this, that God works in mysterious ways, in ways that we can't even imagine that he's going to be working. If I was to tell you about what I'm about to tell you, it's not something that you would ever think would happen. And that's why we can't second guess what he does. We just got to go with it and know that whatever it is the right thing. Now, at this age and where I was at, I had no idea what was what. but I knew the feeling I had. Now, here I am, going through all this stuff, ended up in placement after all the stuff that I had done. I was a criminal. I went through all the stuff that I had gone through. I think it was about two or three different places I went to. I couldn't tell you exactly how many. But I remember I went home for a home visit because I had failed this one home. They didn't have any room in juvenile hall for me to be in, so they sent me home on a house arrest, telling them like they can't go out on a weekend, you can't do this, you can't do that, he's got to stay this and that, all the, I don't know all exact stuff that went on, but basically I was on house arrest. I couldn't go anywhere. Now, remember at this time, this house was a mad house. It was fighting and screaming and all kinds of stuff going on. I didn't want to be there. But I didn't want to be in juvenile hall or anywhere else at this particular time if I could at least go home for a while. Because I felt like I could at least I'd run away or I'd go do something. But as I got home, I remember walking in the door, and I remember seeing my biological mother sitting there with this black book. And she was crying. And I was like, there was no screaming. There was no fighting, or he wasn't even there at the time. And I was like, yeah, what's wrong with you? So she proceeded to start telling me about this Bible. I was like, wait a minute. You're telling me that this is good and you're crying? How does that, especially in those times as a kid, you're like, it doesn't match. Like, you're upset. Why would you want to go do that if it makes you cry? I didn't understand what was going on. So I remember she said, I'm going to go to church. Now, I had a choice. I could stay there. This was the next day. It was on a Sunday. I could go to church with her, which, like I said, I had no idea really what it was. I heard of it. I thought it was a joke. It was funny, a cult. It just was weird. I thought, well, I'll go and hang out and make fun of people, and I don't want to be here either, so I'll just go and just chill. I mean, I didn't know what the environment would be like, but I knew that I had 2 feet and I could kind of go where I want to go. So I said, yeah, I'll go. So we'll go to church, and I remember she brought me into this youth pastor. It was on a Sunday, so they had church there. And on that day, the youth were going to the neighborhood. And they were handing out these flyers that had Wrigley spearmint gums taped to them. And what it was is we were inviting people to come to the church with the kids around the neighborhood. The people that were home were obviously not in church. So he thought they would get these people to come in. So as I'm there, I'm not doing that. Imagine me walking up and inviting someone to church. Hey, what up, brother? Yeah, it just ain't going to work. So I said, you know what? I'll just carry the box. So as I'm carrying the box, the kids would go up, they'd hand these flyers out to these people in the neighborhood. They would take them, they would invite them to church, they would come back down. We were walking around the neighborhood doing that. Well, we did it for about 10 or 15 minutes. I don't remember how long it was, and I felt like, well, you know what, I was getting bored. So I started eating the Wrigley spearmint gums off the flyers. And it was kind of funny, too, because I remember a couple times when they'd go up, I would eat the Wrigley spearmint gum off of them, and they would go up and hand the flyers out. Just as they were hitting the pitch line to them, they looked down, there was no gum on them, and they'd look at me, and I was like, oh, yeah, that was me. It was, it was cool. So here we were, walking around the neighborhood, handing out these gums, handing these flyers out. I had no business being there. I was there because I didn't want to stay there, do work, do weeds, do any of that stuff. I wanted to go and be out. So here I was. And when you talk about things that happen, and I can even today look back on it and just, man, it was an experience that I'm so glad that I had, because if it wasn't for it, man, I'm sure God has other plans, but I just don't know if I'd be here today. I just don't know. And that's why it's so important when we have opportunities that we seize them and that we try to grasp onto them for what they are. Here I was, walking with a group of kids. Didn't want to be there. Didn't care for anybody really that much. I was a rebel. Remember, up to this point, I didn't even know what a hug was. I'd never been hugged other than someone taking advantage of me. somebody wanted something that was nice, it was usually for their benefit. Like they were taking advantage of me. So this is what I knew as being nice. Someone being nice to you was usually because they wanted something. So it's like, so I didn't know this, right? So what I'm about to explain to you, you imagine what I experienced, and then now having this feeling with the mixed emotions that I normally had going with this. That it's like, it could be nobody other than God being able to lay all this out for me. Now here I was, carrying the box, and I remember exactly what happened. I'm walking, and I step off a curb, and just as I step off, it hits the ground, and all of a sudden, I feel peace. Like all my troubles were taken away. Like all my worries and hurt and everything that was chaotic, all of that bundle that was inside of me tearing each other apart was gone. It was just gone. It was like I was at peace. I didn't know what that was. I had mixed emotions about what was going on with something good. Like I was thinking to myself, there's something wrong with me. Why? Because I felt good. It was like, what's wrong? It's weird. Like, am I supposed to feel like this? And I remember, now here's the hard part. Knowing my background, knowing where I came from, knowing how hard it is for me to feel this way and not have mixed emotions about it, now I got to go up to a guy I don't even know and try to explain to him because I wanted to know more. It was that good. I wanted to know more, but I was afraid of being able to expose myself to that I might be taken advantage of because of the feeling that I had, he might take it the wrong way. Here I am stuck in this moment. But I had to do it. Dude, that's how powerful, that's how good it was. I didn't know though. Like I said, I don't know this. So I approached him. Those of us that have experience with God and have walked a mile with him and understand how he works, we know. I didn't then. But we know that he's already laid it out. We already know that it's there waiting for us to take advantage of it. So when I approached him and started to try to talk to him about this feeling with my reservations of what was happening and him being him and me being me, keeping our space, it was jousting with my feelings with this guy without trying to let him in too much. But he knew what I was saying. Basically told me it was the Holy Spirit reaching out, planting a seed in me. Now, I'm not sure he used those exact words, but it was something of that nature, and I was very uncomfortable, but at the same time comfortable. Not experiences or have an understanding for, but knew that it was something that I wanted to pursue. Listen, I'm young. So here I was in this moment. I had felt it. I wanted more of it. Don't understand it. I get baptized. I accept Jesus into my life. Remember, you're talking about a kid that was a gangster. I accepted into my life because I wanted that. I wanted that. And if that's what it took to get that, then I would accept Jesus. Didn't understand the whole thing of it. I didn't. But I knew that I wanted that. So I will accept him if I can have that. I was standing up on stage just like I am right now after I got baptized, speaking to a congregation. It's like, whoa, I'm sure, and I don't know this for sure, but this was my neighborhood, remember. I'm almost positive that half the congregation, I ripped them off. So you imagine their feeling when I was standing up there going, I know that kid. I was a gangster. And here I was standing there speaking to these people, not knowing what I was saying, but obviously it came out pretty good because they understood what it was that I was doing. 2-3 days later, I'm gone. Remember, I was home on a home visit. They didn't have a place for me in juvenile hall. I was there for a short time. I was a ward of the court. So I was yanked out of this environment. Immediately when I found this is great, boom, gone. Now I'm right back into the same situation that I was in that made me the person that I was. Nobody nurturing me or guiding me. Now, we talked about God working in mysterious ways. Here you go. The whole time that I'm going through this, I'm 13 years old when I finally reached the Shamrock Boys Home. And I'm going to back up a little bit. I just want to give you that. 13 years old. Prior to that, 10 years old, going through all those things, I failed all the homes that I went through. After this baptism and the experience I had, I went to several other homes and I kept running away or failing them because I was looking for something different. Some of the homes I went to, the people that were there didn't care whether you went to school as long as you didn't get in their way. They didn't care, just as long as you didn't cause them any problems. I ran away because I was unconsciously searching for something better. Yep. So as I was doing that, I ended up failing many, many places, and it ended up at a place called the Shamrock Boys Home, which during those times, you could not teach church. But the Shamrock Boys Home taught church. How I ended up there was that I had failed all these homes, and they said, if you do not do well in your next placement, you're going to prison. I'm 13 years old. You're going to prison. California Youth Authority is your next stop if you fail another home. The next home I go to is the Shamrock Boys Home, and they teach church. You can't do that. The reason why they were able to teach church at the Shamrock Boys Home is because they had such a high success rate in producing kids and sending them back home into their environments, and the kids were healed. If you were to tell them, man, those guys did a really good job, man, good thing they had church there. No, that wasn't it. Well, what was it? Oh, but it couldn't have been that. Well, give me an example. What else was it then? I don't know, but it wasn't that. That's it. Out of all the homes that I could have went to after failing, constantly searching for something, I end up at the Shamrock Boys Home where they teach church, and it's my last chance. I'm standing here today because I was able to get into a home that was able to teach church and be able to nurture me and help me understand what it is that I felt. I wasn't perfect, trust me. I got into a lot of trouble. Even today, I still fall. But I'm able to continue to stay with Christ and do the things I need to do because I had that feeling, and because I ended up at the Shamrock Boys Home, and because I was taught what it was and what I felt. And I was able to keep searching and nurturing and find myself in a better place. Because of that. Now, just like with anything in life, a lot of us walk around. We praise God. We love God. We make mistakes. Oh, look at that guy. He's a Christian. Look at him. He's doing that. We are all sinners, period. We're not perfect. But here's the thing. As Christians, we have to be able to continue to keep trying to do better. Because we just can't go, we're Christians and that's that. We have to work and try to improve ourselves. For instance, I came to the group home. They taught church. I was able to find out what it was I wanted, it felt, and I wanted to get more of it. I was there. I've got to learn about it. But here's the thing. Bob Shamrock could have stayed there, right? and done what he done. But here it is, okay? It doesn't stop there, because not only did he show me what it was I felt, and he helped me understand what it was I felt, but now he's going to help me heal the damage that was done to me over the years. And how he did that was, like, for instance, when I went there, I went with two other boys. They all had, the two guys that I went to had drug problems. They were constantly being arrested for drugs. I know it's hard to understand and even to think about, but I had a violent problem. So if those two guys went into town and got in trouble and they were smoking a joint, and I went into town and I got caught for the same thing, they were going to get in a lot more trouble than I would. Now, he's explaining this to me with them, and I'm like, dude, that's favoritism. I'm like, well, I'll take it. But he goes, if you guys go into town and you get into a fight, you two get into a fight, and Ken gets into a fight, Ken's going to get in more trouble. Now, I'm going to help you understand this, okay? My problem was I was violent. Their problem was drugs. So now, all of a sudden, he's telling me, hey, I understand what your problem is. We are going to try to help you with that problem. Not all of you are the same. You're not the same people. You have different issues and different problems. So not only did I get the nurturing and the things I needed to help understand what I felt, but now he was giving me a way to help me heal myself with the problems that I had as an individual. I wasn't just another piece of meat there where we were all numbers and we all went by certain things because we all had the same problems, because we didn't. So here I was in a home that gave me all this knowledge, helped me in my life be able to take the anger and the frustration, the hurt, all the things that had happened to me along the way, and be able to compartmentalize it into something positive. Not only was I feeding my faith and have an understanding of it, but now I was able to help me understand what my issues are and how to get me through them. For instance, sports. He introduced me to football because of the anger and the frustration I had inside of me, that it came out every time I got mad. So he got me into wrestling and football to help me experience the anger and frustration into something positive. Made me feel good. I was doing something constructive with that anger. For instance, we had a kid one time who was drawing pictures in school. And one of the pictures he drew, I don't know if some of you may have seen him, was standing on a bunch of bodies, a bunch of blood everywhere, and the guy standing on top of him, and he had two heads. He had a sword in this hand, and had a head in this hand, and he's standing there like this, and blood's dripping off the sword, and blood's dripping out of the neck, and he's standing looking up like this, and it says, "Kill them all." So, as the teacher walks by, freaks out on this kid. It's like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" All of a sudden, they're talking about putting him on medication and pills, and like, there's something wrong with him. It's like, I remembered my mother, not my biological mother, but my mother, who owned the group home, who looked at it in the picture and said, "That's a good drawing." I mean, the lines, and it was, trust me, it was a really, really, really good picture. The lines and everything was really good. The talent was there. And so she looked at the positive in it and said, "Man, that was good. That's a good picture." But instead of attacking him, she started to try to get him to try to draw other things. Yes, he could draw those things, but only at the house when she was there. I'm going to let you do that. But, let's try to start drawing some other things constructively. So there was an addition they were doing on the end of the house. So this kid ends up going in, and she asked him, "Can you draw the addition to this house? And we want to do it like this." So the kid draws this addition, doesn't do the measurements anymore, just draws it. It's awesome, right? I mean, it's beautiful. Good drawing. So instead of attacking this guy because of the violence, because that was his way with anger and frustration of letting things out, was through art. People do it through rapping or singing or whatever it is that you do. It was a way for them to get it out. She recognized that. The kid went on to college to be an architect. All because somebody said, "Oh, you aren't sick. You're not mentally deranged. You're angry. You're venting. But hey, let's take that awesome ability you have and turn it into something positive." And that's literally going through the group home and the things I went through. That's literally what it was just attacking people's positive sides. Instead of every time someone was angry or frustrated and they did something, they were sick. I'm here today, standing on a stage, because someone said, "You know what? First of all, my faith, being able to help me understand what it was that I felt and what I needed to follow. And second was being able to give me an antidote to be able to vent my anger and frustration into something positive, which was sports. I don't know if you guys know this, but I was a world champion in fighting. I had a lot of anger, so I did pretty well. And I want to end it there, but listen, really it's, if I could sum it up, it was just being able, not only for ourselves, to see opportunities for ourselves, to be able to, talk about the things that we've gone through, our testimonies, because it's important we share them. But it's also having an understanding that people around you, whether it's your testimony or whether just talking with them through things, we all have an obligation to share things that have happened to us, our testimonies, to help other people get through things they've been through. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to allow me to come up and speak here and share with you. It's something that I love doing. It's a passion of mine now, and hopefully I'm going to do a whole lot more of it. I'm not a professional speaker, but I love doing it. God bless you guys, and thank you.
Thank you, Ken, for sharing with us. And, so many of you I don't know, and you'd be sitting there and you're like, man, this is not what I was expecting to happen this morning. And so you can sit here and you hear Ken's story and you begin to wonder, like, if he can live through all of that by the time he was 10, is there any chance that my life can be different? If God can heal him through all of the abuse and all of the trauma that he experienced in his life, is there anything that God can do for me and the things that have gone on in my life? And you don't always know, like, where to go or what to do next or what step to take. And so we just want to help you. Ken's going to be flying back to Nevada today, but we're going to be here. We're here every single week. I grew up in this area. I live in this area. And, one of my favorite verses in the Bible says, God places the lonely in families. And he did that for Ken. He was in placement, and he placed him in the Shamrock boys' home, and he was adopted by that family. And God did that for him, and for you, you're adults, so probably you're not going to be adopted, though legally, if that's the step. But God placed you here this morning. Of all the events that happened in your life to get you here, and He used Ken Shamrock's fighting history to get you to consider Him. He knows who you are, and He's after you. So what do you do next? Some of you, you're kind of standing like Ken was at 10 years old as he stepped off that curb and felt God. Felt the peace of God for the first time in his entire life. And then was wrestling with, what do I do next? Do I go talk to the youth pastor? Do I go talk to one of the pastors? Or do I pretend like this never happened? And you're there kind of wrestling with the same thing. If you are kind of making a decision, like, I need to talk to someone about this, we want to help you. So one of the things you can do is on the order of service that was given to you, or on your seat, there's these connection cards that say "Hey" on them. You could take that as kind of your next step in the process of just telling someone like, "Hey, I want to know more about this," or "I want to start being involved in this." And you can fill that out with as much information as you feel comfortable, and then we're gonna email you. So it's really low impact communication with you, just to help you begin to either taking the next step to investigate who Jesus is. You think like, if my hero, Ken Shamrock, has a hero, Jesus, maybe I need to figure out who Jesus is. Or maybe you're just ready and you felt something this morning and you're like, that's it, like I need to go for it. And that could be your step this morning in reaching out to someone and allowing us to kind of come with you and answer questions and be with you on this journey. Maybe you know, and as you do that, we invite you back next week. We're starting a series called Anthems, and I'll be talking. And one of the things that we're doing in this series is we take one of the top songs on the charts right now, and we look at what people are singing about and just kind of the philosophy of the world. And then we look at one of the songs in the Bible. And the song next week is "It Ain't Me." It's a Selena Gomez song in collaboration with some guy whose name I can't pronounce. And the band will be singing that song. Then we'll be looking at the Bible. And there's a famous verse in the Bible that Coolio rapped about, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me." And that's God speaking about his relationship with you. That when you're 10 years old and you're living in a car, whether you're an adult and just life is not going well for you, in the valley of the shadow of death, God's with you. And because he's with you is why you've found yourself here today. It's not Ken Shamrock. I mean, God is using Ken Shamrock because he loves you. And then if you want to, if you're real courageous, we have people up front who will pray with you. Debbie's on this side. Chris and Andrew are on this side. And they'll pray with you this morning if you want to take that step. So the ushers are going forward. And, if you go to Restoration Church, this is your opportunity. You can give right now. We are so glad that you came here today, and invite you back, and hope you'll come back and just begin to find out what God could have for you and what he could have in store for your life. We thank you, Ken, for being here. And I picked him up. His flight yesterday, he flew into Manchester Airport last night, and his flight got delayed. So when I picked him up at the airport, he'd been up since 4:15 in the morning. He looked like he just walked out of the octagon, like he'd just been beat. Like he's living through the airport. I'm like, "Hey, Mr. Shamrock, nice to meet you." "Good to meet you." I'm like, "Oh man." We got in the car. I'm like, "Feel free to sleep the whole way back to Dover." But it's funny. Ken, I posted last week that I was going to be picking you up from the airport, and I asked everybody, like, what restaurant should I bring Ken to? So everybody's listening to all these great restaurants, and so we ate at the 99 last night in Dover. It's just kind of a funny story. Anyway, why don't you...